Welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is really quite specific. We're focusing on just one single source.
That's right.
But it's an incredibly detailed account of a near-death experience. We're looking at Colleen M., NDE 9445.
And what makes this one stand out, I think, is the layers of data. It's not just this subjective story, which is profound in itself.
Right.
We also have objective medical information. And crucially, an eyewitness account from a trained medical professional, her own husband.
Yeah, exactly. We can sort of measure the internal experience against the external reality.
Which sets up this fascinating contrast. You've got this catastrophic physical event. I mean, truly life-threatening numbers we're talking about.
Terrifying statistics for survival in that state.
And on the other hand, this description of, 15 or 20 seconds of just intense, non-religious, hyper-aware bliss.
So we need to unpack that sequence, the timeline, and also this, well, frankly, stunning coincidence that seems to have saved her life right at that critical moment.
It really is remarkable.
Okay, so let's start with the initial crisis. Because the lead up, it's almost a lesson in denial, isn't it?
It really is. This was back in June 2022. She'd been feeling short of breath for a couple of days before the main event.
But she just chalked it up to a cold. Even though her heart rate was already 144, oxygen saturation down to 85%, which is already, worrying.
Definitely cause for concern. But she flat out refused to go get checked out.
And the reason? She had knee surgery scheduled just 3 days later.
Yeah, she didn't want to mess up the appointment for her knee. Prioritizing an elective surgery over, what turned out to be a life or death situation. It shows how focus can be skewed under stress, I suppose.
That denial, it turned critical really fast. Early morning, June 12th, things just fell apart.
She had a severe coughing fit, ended up lying across the bed, just drenched in sweat, couldn't catch her breath at all.
Her first thought was maybe just a vasovagal thing, like fainting, something that would pass quickly.
But it wasn't that at all. She managed to get a pulse oximeter onto her finger. And the numbers, they tell the story. Heart rate shot up to 158.
Okay.
And the oxygen saturation, it plummeted down to 45%.
45. Let's just pause on that. For anyone listening, anything consistently below, say, 60% is incredibly dangerous. It's hard to even stay conscious at 45%.
It's fundamentally incompatible with normal brain function, really.
Yep.
She somehow alerted her husband,
who thankfully is a surgeon, so he knew immediately how bad this was.
He went straight into emergency mode, recognized the signs. They were dealing with a massive saddle pulmonary embolism, a PE.
Right, a saddle PE. We should probably explain that term a bit.
Yeah, so a pulmonary embolism is a blood clot in the lungs, but a saddle PE is the big one. It's a large clot that gets lodged right where the main pulmonary artery splits to go to the left and right lungs.
Like a dam, basically, blocking the lead flow to both lungs at the same time.
Exactly. And her husband saw the effects immediately. Her pulse was barely there, blood pressure crashing, her feet were cyanotic.
Turning blue, no oxygen getting through.
He got their oldest son, grabbed a backboard. He was literally preparing to start CPR right there. That was the objective medical reality.
And right then, in that moment of extreme physical crisis, while waiting for the ambulance, that's when the transition happened for her.
She reported that everything went dark, and she felt herself moving down a tunnel towards this feeling of absolute calm and peace.
Now, here's where it gets really fascinating. The complete mismatch between what she felt and what her husband saw.
Right. Subjectively, she thought she must have just, passed out, looked maybe peaceful, eyes closed.
But her husband, the surgeon watching her, reported the total opposite.
He said her eyes snapped open super wide, and her pupils were fully dilated. He was shouting her name, trying to get a response.
Which, fully dilated pupils like that, that's often a sign of severe oxygen starvation in the brain, cerebral hypoxia.
Exactly. So physiologically, you'd expect maybe unconsciousness, confusion, maybe just blankness.
But she describes entering a state of hyper-awareness, heightened consciousness.
Which brings us to that friction point in the data, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How does someone crashing with 35% oxygen, dilated pupils, report an experience that feels more real, more vivid than normal waking life?
It's the core question, really.
And her husband timed this whole episode, the part where she was subjectively gone, in the tunnel, not responding, lasted only about 15 to 20 seconds.
Just 15 to 20 seconds, such a short window for so much to happen, both physically and subjectively.
A very tight window where biological collapse seemed to meet. Well, subjective transcendence.
Okay, let's explore that transcendence she described. She said the NDE itself was entirely pleasant.
Yes, characterized by this overwhelming sense of peace, calm, love.
Yeah.
She used the term indescribable bliss.
And instantly, as soon as it began, all the physical pain, the suffering, the struggle to breathe, just gone, vanished.
And that altered state of consciousness is so key here. She wasn't just aware. She described herself as fully aware, even hyper-aware.
More intense than normal.
Yes, she specifically said her consciousness and alertness felt more intense, more heightened than everyday awareness. Thoughts were faster. Senses felt more vivid.
Which, again, seems completely counterintuitive given the physical state her body was in.
And radically counterintuitive from a
Yeah.
purely physiological perspective, yes.
And while she was in this state, moving in this tunnel, the usual rules just didn't apply. Time, for instance.
Meaningless. She said time lost all meaning. Didn't exist in that space.
And there was this feeling of connection.
A powerful sense of unity, she called it. Oneness with everything. Total peace and harmony. Her words were, everything just was. Like a fundamental state of being.
Wow. And that feeling, that unity, it brought an intellectual shift too.
Yes, she felt like everything suddenly made sense. It came with this profound knowledge, this certainty, that there is nothing to fear.
Nothing to fear about.
Yeah.
Death.
About anything, it seems. And specifically, she felt she gained information or understanding that things would not end, that moving forward into that light, that peace, meant continuing to live in that beautiful place. It completely reframed her concept of dying.
So she's moving towards this peaceful state, this understanding, and then bang, the exit. It was sudden.
Very dramatic. While moving forward in that tunnel experience, she suddenly heard her name being called.
Loudly,
Her husband shouting.
presumably. And she said she came roaring back to reality. Instantly. And with that return came the immediate agonizing awareness of the pain again, the struggle, the suffocation.
But she confirmed, right, that during the NDE she hadn't heard him.
Correct. That's crucial. While she was gone, in that state of peace, she was not perceiving the external world, including his yelling. But the moment she roared back, she heard his voice.
Which suggests a real dissociation of consciousness from her immediate physical surroundings during those 15-20 seconds.
It certainly points that way. A temporary disconnect from sensory input. Okay, now we have to talk about the medical miracle, really. The reason she could come roaring back. The reason she was still alive for EMS.
Yes, this is perhaps the most astonishing piece of the objective data. Something physical happened during that exact 15 to 20 second window when she was having the NDE.
What was it?
Her body effectively saved itself. That massive saddle PE, the blockage part of it, the section blocking her left pulmonary artery, spontaneously broke free.
Just broke off on its own.
On its own. It traveled further down, becoming peripheral, moving into smaller lung vessels, and that suddenly allowed some blood flow, some perfusion to get through again.
So a spontaneous physical resolution of a life-ending blockage precisely timed with the peak of her NDE.
That's what the medical timeline suggests.
Mm.
Objectively, that clot breaking free is what allowed her heart and lungs to function just enough to keep her alive until intervention.
You just can't ignore that timing. The body initiating this dramatic self-rescue at the very instant the subjective experience is one of profound peace and moving forward.
It's the core mystery, isn't it? Did the extreme biological stress trigger the NBE as some kind of coping mechanism? Or did the subjective state somehow correlate with or even influence the physiological event? We can't say, but the correlation is striking.
So the aftermath was intense, medically speaking.
Oh, yes. Rushed to a major trauma center, high-flow oxygen, IVs everywhere, a central line had to be placed.
And they had to actively break up the remaining clot, right? The thrombolysis.
Yes, catheter-directed thrombolysis. They thread a catheter right up into the pulmonary arteries near the clot.
And inject clot-busting drugs directly onto it. Aggressive treatment.
Very. An IV heparin, blood thinners, the works. But while she was recovering in the ICU, another medical event happened that gives us a really interesting comparison point.
What was that?
The arterial line they were using for monitoring, it perforated the artery, caused something called compartment syndrome in her left arm.
Ooh, that's incredibly painful and dangerous. Pressure builds up, cuts off blood flow.
Exactly. It required an emergency surgery right there in the ICU called a fasciotomy.
Where they cut the arm open to relieve the pressure. Not pleasant.
Definitely not. And here's the fascinating part. They did it under conscious sedation.
Meaning she was awake, aware.
Essentially, yes. Intentionally kept semi-aware. She confirmed she could hear the doctors and nurses talking. She could even speak herself. And she explicitly said she felt the physical sensation, the cutting, the incisions, later the staples going in.
She felt it all.
She felt the sensation. But, and this is the critical parallel to the NDE, she reported experiencing no pain.
Wow. Sensation without suffering, just like in the NDE where there was awareness without suffering?
Precisely. In the NDE, during a profound physiological crisis, she had hyper-awareness, but no pain or distress. During the fasciotomy, under pharmacological intervention, conscious sedation, she had awareness and sensation, but again, no pain.
It really makes you question the nature of pain itself, doesn't it? Maybe it's more of a filter, an interpretation that can be switched off under extreme circumstances, whether biological or chemical.
It certainly raises profound questions about the connection between consciousness, sensation, and suffering.
So where did this whole experience leave Colleen in terms of her beliefs? She mentioned being agnostic before.
Yes, she described herself as unaffiliated or agnostic. And she had this preconceived notion that NDEs were always, religious, angels, pearly gates, that sort of thing.
But hers wasn't like that at all.
Not remotely. She was very clear. No religious figures, no specific deity, just overwhelming peace, light, and that sense of oneness. It was entirely inconsistent with her prior beliefs about what an NDE was supposed to be.
And has it changed her formal beliefs now? Is she still agnostic?
Yes, her formal religious practices, or lack thereof, haven't changed. She still identifies as agnostic, but the personal impact is noticeable.
How so?
She describes herself as less uptight now, finds it easier to shrug things off, more laid back. It seems that intense experience of peace and unity has kind of taken the edge off everyday anxieties.
That makes sense. Did she mention any other major shifts?
Well, she did note something quite significant personally. She said she felt the need to reevaluate my marriage after the experience.
Interesting.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If you experience something you perceive as absolute, unconditional, universal love and oneness, how does that change your perspective on human relationships, which are inherently conditional?
That's a heavy thought. But ultimately for her, the experience itself feels completely real.
Undeniably so, according to her account. She insists the memory of the NDE is crystal clear. More vivid, she says, and more accurate in her mind than the memory of the stressful, chaotic events surrounding it.
And she made a point of contrasting it with fainting.
Yes, she said she'd passed out before, and that was just blankness, no awareness. The NDE was the total opposite. She was so completely aware of what was happening. That feeling of calm, peace, love. She still finds it impossible to describe adequately.
So an agnostic individual who feels she had a direct, non-religious experience confirming consciousness continues, and that the process of dying is, in her words, really beautiful.
That's the core takeaway from her perspective. It didn't align with any religion she knew, but it gave her certainty about continuation and the fundamental nature of it being peaceful.
So wrapping this up, what should you, our listener, take away from this deep dive? We've got this incredibly detailed medical context, a surgeon's eyewitness account of a physical crisis.
And this profound subjective report of peace and unity, all perfectly synchronized within that tiny 15 to 20 second window where the clot miraculously broke free.
Right. The body initiates a life-saving maneuver at the exact moment of peak subjective experience. Is it just a coincidence? Or could that NDE state itself, that feeling of oneness, of peace, somehow be linked to the body's ultimate survival mechanism kicking in at the moment of absolute crisis? Is the NDE itself part of a survival package?
Or does a profound subjective shift correlate with the physiological one in ways we don't yet understand?
That's the question. Something for you to ponder.
Thank you for listening to Borrowed Time NDE Podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss a moment of inspiration. Until next time, wishing you an extraordinary and truly wonderful time on your journey through life.